Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really massive story. We're looking at one of the most ambitious energy policies on the global stage right now, India's huge push toward E20 fuel. It's an absolutely fascinating look at what happens when grand national ambition collides head-on with everyday reality. We're talking about a master plan that promises to save billions of dollars, secure energy independence, and drastically slash emissions. But on the flip side, it's facing some serious friction right at the fuel pump and out in the agricultural heartlands. It is literally a classic case of big picture macroeconomic goals clashing with localized, on the ground challenges.
So why even do this? Well, to understand the sheer necessity of this policy, we have to look at the scale of the problem. $551 billion. Let that number sink in for a second. That was the staggering cost of India's net petroleum imports in just the 2020 to 2021 financial year alone. That equals about 185 million metric tons of petroleum, most of which was just burned right up in the transportation sector. For any growing nation, a colossal import bill like that, it's a massive vulnerability. It drains foreign exchange reserves and leaves your energy security completely at the mercy of wildly volatile global crude oil prices. India needed a homegrown solution, and they needed it fast.
And the government's official response to this vulnerability? Enter the Niti Aayog roadmap for ethanol blending. This master plan basically shifts the strategy entirely. Instead of just trying to hunt down more oil, the goal is to dramatically scale up the blending of domestically produced ethanol directly into the national petrol supply. It's a really bold vision. They're effectively trying to turn the country's agricultural output into a shield against global oil dependency. Now, just to be super clear on the chemistry here, what exactly is E20? It's simply a fuel blend made up of 20% ethanol and 80% petrol. So, instead of pumping pure fossil fuels, an E20 mandate means that 1/5 of the liquid firing inside a car's engine is essentially grown on a farm. It's a fundamental shift in the combustion DNA of millions and millions of vehicles on the road today. And the financial gravity of that 20% shift? It is immense. The roadmap projects that a successful E20 program can save India roughly $4 billion US, or about 30,000 crore rupees every single year. I mean, with savings of that magnitude, the massive financial incentive driving this mandate becomes pretty obvious, right? It isn't just an environmental green initiative. It is a critical economic strategy aimed at keeping billions of dollars inside the country rather than sending them overseas.
Because those strategic rewards are so high, the whole timeline got aggressively fast-tracked. The original goal line for Pan-India E20 availability was set for 2030, but it was abruptly pulled forward to April 2025. This rapid phasing, moving from the E10 rollout in 2022 straight toward full E20 integration, represents an absolute breakneck transition for an entire nation's fueling infrastructure and automotive fleet.
But, moving at breakneck speed usually creates some friction. Mechanically speaking, E20 is a bit of a double-edged sword. On one hand, yes, it offers a higher octane number and significantly lower tailpipe emissions. Fantastic. However, ethanol has about 2/3 the calorific value of gasoline. Less heating energy simply means you need more fuel to get the exact same power output. Plus, older vehicles that weren't explicitly designed for E20, they face real, tangible material compatibility issues with their rubber and plastic engine components. And drivers? They are definitely noticing this drop in calorific value. The ministry has actually validated these widespread complaints, stating outright, it is true that in some vehicles, there may be a 3 to 5% reduction in fuel economy, but mileage is only one parameter. Which, fair enough. From a macro national perspective, the emissions and import savings take priority, but if you're the everyday commuter, a drop in mileage is a highly tangible, immediate hit to your wallet. So this consumer frustration is naturally spilling directly onto the forecourts. Petrol dealers, particularly in regions like Odisha, are really caught in the crossfire here. They're fielding daily complaints from angry motorists whose older vehicles just aren't compatible with the 20% blend, especially when you consider the global standard in most markets is still closer to 10%. Compounding all of this, dealer margins have been totally stagnant at around 10% since 2024. It's gotten so bad that some have formally requested a return to E10 just until overall vehicle compatibility can catch up. Okay, let's pivot away from the highways for a second and look at the farmlands, because the supply side is facing its own massive hurdle. To actually hit that 2025 deadline, physical ethanol production capacity has to more than double. It needs to jump from 684 crore liters back in the 2019-20 period to a staggering 1,500 crore liters. To pull that off requires relentless infrastructure expansion across both traditional sugarcane mills and newer grain-based distilleries. And this massive, sudden demand for agricultural feedstock introduces a pretty severe macroeconomic complication. In fact, the 2026 Economic Survey flagged a critical early warning sign. They posed a really stark question: fuel over food. The concern here is that the ethanol program is becoming so incredibly massive and honestly so lucrative that it's fundamentally shaping the entire nation's crop priorities.
Think about how this works. The E20 mandate acts as a massive demand signal. Because the government is basically guaranteeing demand in order to hit their targets, growing biofuel feedstocks is suddenly a highly lucrative business. The Economic Survey noted that crops like maize have become far more attractive for farmers to grow than competing food crops. And since distilleries are heavily reliant on these first-generation sources, meaning actual food crops like rice, sugarcane, and maize, well, the country's energy needs are suddenly competing directly with its food production acreage. There is also a hidden environmental cost that we have to talk about: 3,000 liters. According to the government's own roadmap, that is exactly how much water it takes to produce just 1 single liter of sugarcane-derived ethanol. It's wild to think about. With sugarcane and paddy already drinking up an estimated 70% of the country's irrigation water, aggressively scaling up these specific crops places just an enormous strain on critical, highly finite water resources.
So, when you put it all together, we're really observing a profound national balancing act. On one side, you have this vital ambition of saving $4 billion a year in foreign imports, achieving real energy security, and meaningfully lowering vehicular emissions. But on the other side, you've got everyday motorists losing their mileage, petrol dealers feeling financially squeezed, and this highly lucrative fuel market threatening vital food crop acreage and water supplies.
It's a deeply complex transition, and quite frankly, there are no easy answers. The macroeconomic benefits are undeniable, for sure, but those localized costs, they're very, very real. Which leaves us with this final, somewhat provocative thought. Is the road to energy independence paving over our food security and engine efficiency? How a nation navigates these hidden trade-offs will ultimately determine the true success of the entire E20 mandate. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you in the next one.